Gentlemen, let me be direct with you. You've been told a story your entire life that masturbation was dirty, shameful, something a man should leave behind once he crossed 50. But I've spent over 3 decades sitting across from men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, and I can tell you that story is a lie. The truth, after 60, how you relate to your body, yes, even how you touch yourself, can be the dividing line between a man who declines quietly and a man who reclaims his spark. My name is Dr. Jonathan Prescott. For more than 30 years, I've walked the halls of medicine, guided men through their most private struggles, and listened to their whispered fears. I've seen men defeated not by disease, but by silence, shame, and misinformation. Not by what happened to them, but by what they never knew. Because here's the reality no one talks about. Most older men are doing it wrong, or worse, they've stopped altogether. And when that happens, hormones falter, blood flow slows, nerves go quiet, and the very spirit of a man begins to dim. What once was a simple act of release becomes either mechanical, numbing, or absent entirely. And the cost isn't just sexual. It's your energy, your sleep, your heart, even your brain. Done wrong, it can train your body into dysfunction. Done right, it can boost testosterone, restore circulation, and keep your nervous system alive. This isn't about chasing pleasure, it's about fighting back against aging at its very root. So let me ask you a question. If 10 minutes a day could change the way you live your next 10 years, wouldn't you at least want to know what it is? Stay with me, because I'm going to share with you 7 truths about masturbation that most men over 60 were never taught, truths that can mean the difference between decline and vitality. But before we begin, if you haven't yet, tap that subscribe button. Not for me, for yourself. Because every time you subscribe, you guarantee you'll never miss another life-saving, science-based insight made for men in your stage of life. And if this opening already resonates with you, type a simple 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0. That way I'll know exactly how to keep serving you better. Now let's begin with the very first truth. The most common mistake older men make when it comes to self-pleasure. A mistake so subtle, so silent, it steals sensitivity, weakens erections, and slowly erodes confidence before a man even realizes what's happening. Gentlemen, let me tell you the truth that too many men whisper only when the door is closed. Over the last 30 years, I've had hundreds of men in their 60s and 70s sit across from me, their eyes lowered, their voices almost breaking, and finally confess, "Doc, I don't feel much anymore." Or, "I can only finish if I do it a certain way." Or the one that still stings me to hear, "It's like my body forgot how to feel." Now listen carefully, most of these men weren't broken, they weren't defective, they were simply trained in the wrong direction. Here's what I mean. For decades, they'd been treating self-pleasure like a race. Quick, mechanical, disconnected. Shoulders tense, mind distracted, eyes locked on a glowing screen, hand moving the same way every single time. Over and over again, they were teaching their nervous system one lesson: arousal equals this exact pattern. And the brain, gentlemen, it is a very quick learner. The result? Sensitivity drops. Erections fade. You need more stimulation, more intensity, more tricks just to feel what used to come naturally. And when you finally lie next to a real partner, the real world feels too slow, too quiet, too human. That's when confidence crumbles. That's when men start to avoid intimacy, not because they don't want it, but because it feels out of reach. I've watched men slip into frustration, shame, even depression, convinced their bodies had betrayed them. But in truth, it wasn't age. It wasn't fate, it was conditioning, years of training the nervous system in the wrong direction. What we now call porn-induced erectile dysfunction or delayed ejaculation is nothing exotic. It's a habit turned into a trap. And here's the cost. It's not just sex you lose, it's the mirror, the spark in your step. The way you carry yourself when you walk into a room. You begin to retreat, shrink, disappear. Little by little, isolation sets in. And with it, the risk of depression, even cognitive decline. But I'm not telling you this to shame you. I'm telling you this to wake you up. Because here's the good news: your body can relearn. The nervous system is not dead, it's trainable, it's flexible, even at 70, even at 80. But it requires awareness. It requires slowing down, reconnecting, breathing, touching with presence instead of distraction. Think of it like driving. If you slam your car into gear and stomp the accelerator without steering, you'll crash. That's what mindless masturbation does. But if you hold the wheel, pay attention, and guide the vehicle, you get somewhere worth going. So remember this: the problem isn't masturbation itself. The problem is doing it like you don't matter. Like your body is just a machine to get through. That is what steals sensation. That is what creates dysfunction. Gentlemen, you are not broken, you are simply conditioned. And the sooner you steer differently, the sooner your body remembers what it means to feel alive. Gentlemen, let me take you into my office for a moment. A few years ago, a man named David, age 68, sat across from me. Strong man, proud, the kind who never liked to complain, but that night he was desperate. He told me he was waking up 5, sometimes 6 times just to rush to the bathroom. His words were careful, almost embarrassed. "Doc, I think it's just old age." I looked him in the eye and asked one question he never expected. "When was the last time you ejaculated?" He blinked, stunned, and then whispered, "Years, my wife passed, and I thought men my age were supposed to stop." And that right there, my friend, is the silent myth that destroys countless men: the belief that once you reach 60 or 70, you're supposed to shut this part of yourself down. But here's the science. Your prostate never stops working. Every single day it continues producing fluid. And if that fluid has nowhere to go, it builds up. Slowly, quietly, like a reservoir with no outlet. And when that happens, the gland swells, the tissues become irritated, inflammation sets in. Suddenly you're feeling pressure in your pelvis, weak stream, dribbling, urgency, even pain. Most men shrug it off as just aging. But it isn't. It's congestion. It's a system under pressure. And the longer you ignore it, the worse it gets. Here's where it gets serious. Chronic inflammation in the prostate has been linked to increased risk of prostate cancer. I'm not saying abstinence causes cancer, but I am saying that ejaculation is one of nature's built-in ways to keep the gland flushed, oxygenated, and less vulnerable to disease. The evidence is clear. A large Harvard study followed nearly 30,000 men and found those who ejaculated at least 21 times per month had a significantly lower risk of developing prostate cancer. That's not folklore, that's data. Now back to David. Once he understood what was happening inside his body, he made a choice. Slowly, carefully, he began reconnecting with himself, not out of lust, not out of loneliness, but out of care. Within weeks, the pressure eased, his sleep improved, his eyes, which once looked heavy and dim, began to shine again. Gentlemen, ignoring this is not harmless. The cost is real. It's nights of broken sleep, it's medications you may not need, it's the scalpel of a surgeon years down the line, all because of a lie that said you're too old. You would never ignore your heart. You would never ignore your blood pressure. Don't you dare ignore your prostate. Because here's what most men don't realize: the damage is not just physical. The shame, the silence, the decades of guilt surrounding self-touch, they don't just sit in your head, they live in your nervous system. And that, my friend, can break a man faster than disease. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Gentlemen, let's be honest. For many of you listening right now, this is the hardest part to face. Not the physical symptoms, not the sleepless nights or the weak stream, but the quiet shame that's been riding your shoulders for decades. I see it every day in my office. It's not in the words you say, it's in the silence. The way your eyes shift when I mention masturbation. The way your shoulders sink when the subject of sex comes up. The way you laugh it off. Like it's something childish, something you outgrew. But let me tell you what I hear underneath that laughter. I hear grief, I hear guilt, I hear the heavy echo of a lie you were taught as a boy that touching yourself was dirty, sinful, weak. Those words didn't disappear, gentlemen. They sank deep into your bones. They shaped the way you relate to your own body. And now, 60, 70 years later, you're still carrying them, quiet, invisible, poisonous. I had a patient once, 72, newly divorced. He told me he hadn't had any sexual activity, not with a partner, not alone, in over a decade. He looked me in the eye and said, "Doc, I thought that chapter was closed." But what I saw wasn't acceptance, it was grief. He wasn't mourning the loss of sex, he was mourning the loss of self. Here's what most men don't realize: shame is not just emotional, it's biological. When you carry shame, your muscles tighten. Your cortisol, your stress hormone, climbs, your brain loops with guilt, and all of that over time poisons your health. Chronic shame is chronic stress, and chronic stress has teeth. It feeds anxiety, it worsens depression, it raises blood pressure, it disrupts sleep, it weakens immunity, it even chips away at memory and focus, setting the stage for dementia. On the other hand, regular, healthy self-touch does the opposite. It boosts dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation. It releases oxytocin, the hormone of trust, warmth, and connection. It lowers cortisol, it regulates your sleep, it lifts your mood. In short, it tells your brain and your body you're still alive, you're still connected, you still matter. That 72-year-old man, we started simple. No porn, no pressure, just breathing, touch without guilt, connection without agenda. And week by week, his posture changed. His sleep deepened, his laugh came back, even his blood pressure dropped. That's the power of removing shame. It doesn't just restore pleasure, it restores presence. Gentlemen, shame is the silent thief of vitality. It convinces you you're too old, too dirty, too far gone, but you are not. You are never too old to treat yourself with dignity. You are never too far gone to feel alive again. And if shame can erode your health this deeply, imagine what happens when you add hormonal decline to the equation. Because the truth is this: testosterone doesn't just fall because of age. It falls faster when you stop engaging with your sexual self. And that's the next secret every man needs to hear. Gentlemen, let me tell you something most doctors never say plainly. Testosterone does not just vanish because you're older. It fades faster when you stop reminding your body that you're still a man who wants to feel alive. I've sat with men in their 70s, even 80s, who tell me, "Doc, I guess I'm just slowing down." They blame the calendar. They think the loss of strength, the belly creeping forward, the sleepless nights, the lack of desire, it's all just age. But when I look at their blood work, I see something different. Their testosterone isn't simply low, it's neglected. Your body is always listening, and when you stop engaging with your sexual self, when you stop touching, stop arousing, stop reminding your biology that you still need this, your body gets the message. It reallocates resources. It dials down hormone production. It says, he doesn't need testosterone anymore. And the result, muscle tone shrinks. Energy wanes, mood darkens. The edge you once carried, the spark that made you feel like yourself, fades away, not because you're old, but because your body has stopped being asked to show up. I remember Frank. He was 73, a retired firefighter. Strong hands, strong back, but when he came to me, he was slumped in the chair, his voice heavy. "I just don't feel like myself anymore." His testosterone levels confirmed it. They were barely above clinical deficiency. And when I asked about his sexual activity, he just shook his head. I don't see the point. That belief that sexuality no longer matters is the real thief. So I worked with Frank. We didn't start with medication. We started with reconnection, simple, intentional self-touch. No shame, no pressure, just presence. And within months, not only did his labs improve, his posture changed. His eyes lit up. He started lifting weights again. He carried himself like a man who remembered who he was. Science confirms this. Studies show that sexual activity, even solo, triggers short-term boosts in testosterone. Erotic imagination, physical touch, even anticipation light up the brain, regulating hormones, lifting mood, sharpening focus. Your biology is built to respond to engagement. When you give it nothing, it shuts down. When you give it presence, it comes back to life. Low testosterone is not just about bedroom performance. It's about your heart, your bones, your memory, even your lifespan. Men with chronically low testosterone face higher risks of heart disease, diabetes, depression, and early death. This is not just a number on a lab sheet. It's a mirror of how engaged you are with life itself. So hear me clearly, you are not too old to awaken testosterone. You don't need a partner. You don't need a prescription. You need permission from yourself to stay connected to your body. To send the signal, I still need this. I still want to feel. I'm still alive. And when you do, your biology listens. But testosterone is not the only system that depends on engagement. There's another just as vital, just as fragile, that follows the same rule: use it or lose it. And once it's gone, it's much harder to get back. That's where we're going next. Gentlemen, there's a dangerous lie many men over 60 quietly believe. If I'm not having sex, I don't need erections anymore. I've heard it said hundreds of times, shrugged off as if function were just a luxury of youth. But let me be very clear, erections are not just about sex. They are about blood flow. They are about nerve health. They are about life itself. The penis is like any other muscle and vascular structure in your body. If you don't use it, you lose it. When regular erections stop, whether through intercourse, masturbation, or even natural arousal, your body assumes the system is obsolete. Smooth muscle begins to atrophy. Blood vessels stiffen. Nitric oxide production, that vital chemical that signals your body to send blood where it matters, dwindles. And over time, the very tissues that once swelled with vitality become scarred, rigid, unresponsive. I'll never forget Harold. He was 69 when he sat down in my office, sharp mind, strong history. But when I asked about his sexual function, he admitted he hadn't had an erection in over 5 years. Not because he couldn't, but because he thought there was no reason to. His wife had passed, he wasn't dating, so he let it go. He assumed his body would simply wait until he needed it again. But the body doesn't wait, it closes down. When I examined him, it was clear his vascular tissue had stiffened, his responsiveness was diminished. And when he did want intimacy again, he found his body no longer remembered how. The damage wasn't age, it was disuse. Gentlemen, this is the brutal truth. Erectile function is a use it or lose it system. Just like your legs weaken if you stop walking, just like your lungs struggle if you never breathe deeply, your erections fade if you don't keep the system alive. And the cost isn't just physical, it's psychological. Because when a man loses his function, he often loses confidence. He avoids mirrors, he avoids intimacy. He walks into a room smaller than he once was, and little by little, depression, withdrawal, even cognitive decline creep in, not because he's old, but because he stopped reminding his body of its purpose. Here's the good news. You can keep the system alive without a partner, without shame, without pressure. Regular erections, through self-stimulation, through erotic imagination, through simple arousal, keep blood flowing, nerves firing, tissues oxygenated. They tell your body this still matters. Think of it as maintenance, like running your car engine once a week. You don't do it because you're driving somewhere. You do it so it's ready when you are. So don't buy the lie that erections are unnecessary once sex slows down. Erections are your body's way of saying, I'm still connected. I'm still alive. And if you're wondering what could silently sabotage this system even further, the answer is something most men turn to without thinking. Something that rewires your brain with every click. That, gentlemen, is pornography, and it's the next truth we must face. Gentlemen, I know just saying the word makes some of you shift in your seat. Pornography. Maybe you want to look away. Maybe you think this conversation is for younger men, not you. But listen carefully, because I've had men in their 60s and 70s, even their 80s, sit across from me and admit, Doc, I still watch. Not because they are addicted thrill seekers, but because for many it's the only way they still feel something. Divorced men, widowed men, men who live alone, they're not chasing lust, they're chasing connection or at least the memory of it. But here's what most don't realize. The pornography of today is not the magazines you hid under your bed at 20. It's not a few soft images from a VHS tape. Today, it's high-speed, high-stimulation, instant novelty, dozens of tabs, endless scrolling, extreme clips available in seconds. And your brain, especially an aging brain, is not built to handle that flood without consequences. Here's what happens. Every time you watch porn, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical of motivation, reward, and pleasure. That's normal. But when you keep flooding the system with artificial, exaggerated stimulation, the brain adapts. It becomes desensitized. What used to excite you now barely registers, and soon the touch of a real partner feels flat, too slow, too quiet. I've seen this again and again. As erections falter, sensitivity fades. Some men develop what we now call porn-induced erectile dysfunction. They can only perform with porn, not with a partner, not even with themselves without the screen. Others fall into delayed ejaculation or even anorgasmia, the inability to climax at all. And the cruel part, they blame themselves. They think they're broken. They spiral into shame, frustration, even depression. But in truth, they're not broken. They're rewired. Gentlemen, I want you to hear me clearly. This is not permanent. The brain can heal, even at 60, even at 70, even at 80. Neuroplasticity, the ability of your nervous system to rewire itself, doesn't vanish with age, but it requires a choice. I've had patients take a 30-day break from all visual stimulation. The first week is uncomfortable. The second feels strange, but by the third, something shifts. Touch feels different. Imagination stirs again. The body begins to respond to presence, to breathe, to reality. Others ease into it more slowly, but the principle is the same. Step back from the artificial highs so you can reclaim the real ones. Pornography is not about morality. I'm not here to shame you. This is about biology, about reclaiming sensitivity, vitality, and connection. The goal is not to give up pleasure. The goal is to reclaim it as your own, to feel again what is real, what is grounded, what is human. And if digital overload can rewire your brain, then imagine what happens when you strip away touch altogether. Because there is one danger more silent, more devastating than porn, something I've seen hollow out men from the inside out. And that, gentlemen, is isolation. Gentlemen, of all the dangers we've spoken about, low testosterone, weak erections, prostate inflammation, there is one that's even more devastating. One that creeps in quietly, unnoticed, until it robs a man of far more than sex. And that danger is isolation. I don't just mean living alone. I'm talking about a deeper silence. The silence that comes when you stop being touched, when you stop touching yourself. When you quietly surrender the physical connection that tells your nervous system, I'm still here. I remember Peter, 76 years old, a retired engineer, well-dressed, polite, his words measured. But when I asked about his daily life, there was a hollowness in his voice. "Doc," he said, "I haven't been touched in over a year, not a hug, not a hand on my shoulder, nothing." He didn't even say it with sadness. He said it with resignation, as though this chapter of life was simply closed. But here's the truth. Touch is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. The human body, whether at 20, 60, or 80, requires it. Without touch, oxytocin levels drop, cortisol creeps up, blood pressure rises, sleep suffers. Immune function weakens, and the brain begins to downshift, shutting down emotional and sensory circuits to protect itself from the pain of deprivation. The result? Numbness. Not just physical, but emotional. You stop feeling urgency. You stop feeling alive. You slowly stop feeling anything, and it doesn't happen overnight. It happens in inches. One skipped routine, 1 week without intimacy, 1 month without touch, until eventually you convince yourself there's nothing left to feel at all. That, gentlemen, is how men disappear, not with a bang, but with a slow retreat into silence. Isolation steals vitality, erodes purpose, and accelerates decline. Studies show that chronic loneliness is as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Let that sink in, and here's the cruel part: it often begins in the bedroom. The moment a man stops touching himself, not just for pleasure, but for connection, for presence, his brain interprets it as retreat, and little by little, the self he once knew begins to fade. But hear me on this: isolation does not have to be your fate. As I've seen men come back to life simply by giving themselves permission to return to touch, by breaking the silence, by saying with their hands, their breath, their awareness, "I am still here, I still matter, I still want to feel." And when they do, their posture changes. Their voice deepens. Their eyes carry light again, because touch isn't just about skin, it's about soul. It tells your nervous system, your heart, your mind, you are alive and you are not done yet. Gentlemen, isolation is the most dangerous mistake. Don't let silence convince you that you're invisible. Don't let distance convince you you're finished. You are not finished. And in fact, there's one more truth, one more secret that ties all of this together, something most men never realize. The connection between self-touch, recovery, and sleep. That's where we go next. Gentlemen, let me ask you something simple. How many nights have you lain awake, staring at the ceiling, tossing and turning, waking 3, 4, 5 times just to stumble to the bathroom? And how many times have you shrugged and said, "That's just age"? But what if I told you your sleep, or the lack of it, may be tied directly to your sexual nervous system? Here's the truth most men never hear. Regular sexual activity, including self-touch, is one of the body's natural regulators of sleep. Each time you engage with yourself consciously, your brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, and prolactin, neurochemicals that don't just boost mood but also signal your body to wind down, to enter deeper stages of rest. That release is nature's built-in sedative. When you stop, the system stalls. Cortisol, your stress hormone, stays high. Your mind races when it should be quiet. Testosterone dips lower. And the vicious cycle begins. Poor sleep lowers hormones. Weak hormones worsen sleep. Before long, you're trapped in a loop of fatigue, irritability, and decline. I think of Richard, 71, a former teacher who came to me exhausted. He said, "Doc, I'm sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. I wake up constantly. I feel like a ghost during the day." He was convinced he needed a stronger sleeping pill. But when I asked about sexual activity, he looked away. Not for years. I explained what I'll tell you now. The nervous system doesn't just regulate your sexuality, it's also your sleep switch. Neglect one and the other suffers. So I gave him a simple protocol: no screens, no distractions, just 10 minutes of slow, intentional self-touch before bed. Not for climax, but for connection, for presence. Within weeks, he reported sleeping 6, even 7 hours straight. His morning energy came back. His wife even told me half-jokingly, "Doc, I don't know what you said to him, but he whistles when he makes the coffee again." Gentlemen, this is no small thing. Deep sleep is when testosterone regenerates. It's when growth hormone repairs your muscles. It's when your cardiovascular system resets. And if you're missing that because you've shut down your sexual nervous system, you're cutting off one of the most powerful recovery tools nature gave you. So hear me clearly. After 60, self-connection isn't just about preserving erections or boosting testosterone. It's about keeping your nights whole, your mornings strong, and your body resilient. Touch is medicine. A presence is sleep, and sleep, gentlemen, is life. And now, with these 8 secrets laid before you, the question becomes, what do you do with them? That's where the conclusion comes in, the part that ties it all together into one clear, practical path you can start today. Gentlemen, if you've stayed with me through all 8 secrets, I want you to hear this not just as a doctor, but as a man who has walked alongside thousands of men just like you. This conversation was never just about masturbation. It was never only about erections or testosterone or sleep. It was about something deeper, about whether you still believe your life, your body, your manhood, your vitality matter after 60. We began with the truth that mindless self-pleasure trains dysfunction, that years of quick, mechanical habits can rob you of sensitivity and joy. We uncovered how ignoring ejaculation leads to prostate congestion and inflammation, quietly setting you up for nights of pain and long-term risk. We faced the heavy weight of shame, that poison handed down by culture and silence, and how it slowly strangles not just desire but mental health. We saw that testosterone doesn't just decline with age, it declines faster when you stop engaging with your sexual self. That erections are a use it or lose it system, as vital to your vascular health as your heartbeat. We dared to face the truth about pornography, that it rewires the brain and dulls your capacity for real pleasure, but also that recovery is possible. We looked at isolation, the most dangerous enemy of all, the slow fading of identity when a man retreats from touch. And finally, we revealed that self-connection is tied to recovery and sleep, that your nervous system, your hormones, even your mornings depend on what you do in the quiet of the night. So what does this mean for you? It means you are not broken, you are not finished, you are not invisible. Every system in your body, even now, is waiting for a signal, waiting for you to say, I'm still here. I still want to feel. I still want to live. That choice does not require pills, it does not require a partner, it does not require shame, it requires presence. 10 minutes a day of intentional self-connection, what I call the golden protocol. 10 minutes to breathe, to touch, to feel without judgment. Do it in the morning to wake your body. Do it at night to settle your nervous system. But do it, because those minutes become momentum, and momentum becomes vitality. I've seen men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s come back to life with this practice. Their eyes sharpen, their voice steadies, their shoulders rise, and perhaps most importantly, their sense of self returns. Gentlemen, aging is inevitable, decline is not. You are not a passenger in your own body, you are the driver. And starting tonight, you can take the wheel again. If this message has struck a chord in you, don't keep it silent. Leave a comment, type 1 if this resonates, 0 if it doesn't. Subscribe if you haven't yet so you never miss another truth that could restore your health, your hope, and your strength. Share this with a brother, a friend, a father, because silence is what keeps men broken and voice is what brings us back. And above all, remember this: you are not too old to feel alive. You are not too far gone to return to yourself. You are not broken. You are waiting to be reawakened. So tonight, when the world is quiet, give yourself permission. Breathe, touch, reconnect, because life is not over and neither are you.